Hello, my name's Julian Edgar and I'm the author of the book Modifying the Electronics of Modern Classics. It's for people with cars from the 1990s and that next decade. What I want to do in today's video is talk about tuning programmable engine management. And I'm talking about you tuning programmable engine management in your car on the road. Now, most people who have programmable management fitted to their cars take it to a dyno, a rolling road, and get the mechanic to do the tune. And there's no problem with that. But if you want to save a lot of money, and if you want your car to drive exactly as you prefer, then tuning it yourself is a quite viable option. That's the case for most cars. If you have a really powerful car that just wheel spins everywhere, then I would not suggest you tune it on the road. But if you have a more conventional car in terms of its power output, it's got good performance, but it's not a tyre smoking mad thing, then you can certainly tune it on the road. Now, I'm not talking from theory. As with everything in the book, I've done it myself. And I have, in one of my cars, a Motec programmable engine management system. I did all the tuning of that system on the road. I didn't even have a starting map. No one had ever fitted programmable management to the car that I had fitted it to. And so there was really no information on the tune that was required. So when I talk about tuning on the road, I am speaking from experience of having done it. Now, what do you need to be able to tune on the road? You need to have, firstly, a good air-fuel ratio meter. Now, I use a Motec PLM, which I've had for a very long time. These days, air-fuel ratio meters, good air-fuel ratio meters with wideband sensors have come down dramatically in price. I think it's an absolute prerequisite. You must have a good air-fuel ratio meter if you're going to be able to do any tuning. It's best if the sensor is connected near to the engine rather than behind cat converters. You can use a tailpipe sniffer, but it's best if you are doing extensive tuning that you actually have that sensor mounted near to the engine. If you are running a digital dash, you can easily bring up that sensor display on the digital dash, and then of course it's easy to see it right in front of you. Otherwise you might need a little display stuck to the windscreen with a suction cap or something of that sort. The second thing you need is a way of detecting detonation. Now, it depends on the engine management system you're using. Some of those have got a display that'll bring up engine detonation. Some of those have got a headphone socket that you can plug in and listen to what the detonation sensor is doing. Or you can do as I do and make your own simple amplified detonation system. I cover how to do that in another one of the videos, where you wear headphones and you can actually listen to a microphone on the engine. Now, I said wear headphones. Often you will need to have an assistant to help you when you're tuning on the road, and that assistant might be driving the car while you're operating the laptop and while you're listening to the engine. I'll come back to the logistics in a little while. You also need a spark plug spanner. A what? A spark plug spanner? Over the years, I've been in lots of engine dyno rooms of top race car teams, people doing very high power engines, and it's always intrigued me that no matter how complex their gear is for monitoring the engine, periodically they'll go and pull a spark plug and then examine it. And typically they're examining it through a high magnification lens. What they're looking for are things that show that the combustion is not occurring properly. So for example, if the engine is detonating and you can't hear it, but it is detonating, there'll be tiny specks of aluminium on the spark plug nose, on the insulator, that have been deposited there as they've been eroded from the top of the piston. You'll also see if the combustion temperature is much too hot for the plug that you're using. You need colder plugs, in other words, because again there'll be a change in behaviour of the plug. The electrode will be eroding away. In really bad cases of poor combustion, the ceramic will be shattered on the nose of the plug. So pulling out a plug and examining it, it's best if you do it in a very bright light, and it's best if you do it with a really strong hand magnifier. It can give you reassurance that the tune is proceeding as it should and there's not a catastrophic problem occurring. And of course you can pull out every plug and look at every plug because combustion temperatures will vary across the engine. The last thing you need is a plan. Now, the biggest part of my learning curve in mapping the programmable management system in my car was the fact that it was very easy to lose your place in what you were trying to achieve. I must say, despite having watched many mechanics tuning programmable management on the chassis dyno, on the rolling road, my opinion really went up when I actually had to do it myself, because there's so many different things to be keeping in your mind simultaneously. It's easy to get lost. What do I mean? Well, here's an example. If you are tuning the starting behaviour of the car, in other words, getting the cold start right, and you get it idling, right, and you've got it idling, and then the next day you come back and redo it, don't change everything you set the day before, because you're back to square one again. So you've got to build step by step. If you are setting the idle speed control, don't change it the next day when you're tuning the fuel maps. Okay, do one step at a time. Get the cold start right, get the idle right, get the light loads right, get the medium loads right, and then get the heavy loads right. And don't keep going back and changing what you've done before until at least you've got the whole thing working properly. Otherwise, it's so easy to chase your tail endlessly, tweaking what you did the day before, going backwards. The next day you come in, oh, that wasn't any good, I'll tweak that again. You can literally spend the rest of your life tuning one of these systems. So do it one step at a time and be careful not to go back over the ground you've already done until a major change is needed in that area. Now, I'm not saying never go back and change what you've done, but it's really easy to say, oh, I'll pick up where I was yesterday, oh, that wasn't any good. You might have spent 3 hours tuning yesterday, and you just wasted that time because you're just changing everything that you'd already said. So a plan means you do one stage at a time. So if you've got variable valve timing, you spend that tuning session just changing variable valve timing. If you're doing idle speed control, you just do idle speed control. If you're doing boost control, you just do boost control. Okay, so a plan means a logical sequence of events in which you are applying it to the tuning of the car. I mean, that sounds really obvious, but my experience was it was so tempting to go back and change everything you did the day before, and then really at the end of that tuning session you say, well, I'm no further ahead than I was yesterday, and it can really watch the time go by. Now, tuning the car yourself, I said earlier, it gives you the ability to make the car drive as you wish. And you might think to yourself, well, surely, you know, any tune is the same in that respect, but it's not. I'll give you an example. What suits you in acceleration enrichment may not suit someone else. What's he mean? Well, what I found is on a manual transmission car, the acceleration enrichment and the ignition timing advance with throttle movement was critical in getting smooth gear changes and getting quick smooth gear changes. And so I ended up really tuning the car to suit the speed with which I was making gear changes, to make it work best for my driving style. And I was really surprised. It was a turbo car, and I was surprised how quickly I could get the turbo back on boost after a gear change just by tweaking ignition timing advance, transitional ignition timing advance, and tweaking fuel enrichment with throttle movement. So there's a specific example where I could tune it to do exactly what I wanted, whereas another tuner may have preferred a quite different response, a quite different outcome. It's a huge amount of fun. I honestly believe it's the most exciting thing I've ever done on a car and the most rewarding, and that is tuning every aspect of how that engine works and runs to suit what you want to achieve in your own car. So I recommend it, but always keep in mind you must have an air fuel ratio meter, you must have a detonation detector, you must pull out spark plugs, especially in the initial stages of tuning, to make sure you're on the right track, and you need a plan, otherwise you're just going to be going back over the same ground. I said earlier about having an assistant, especially when you're starting out. You're getting those initial light load and medium load maps working. You're just exploring the sort of fueling and ignition timing you're going to need to make the car run at least adequately. I think it is good to have an assistant doing the driving, and you simply ask them to do, you know, full throttle please between 2,000 and 3,000 RPM or whatever it might be. Once you've got that basic mapping done, I think you can work on your own. Be careful if you're wearing headphones. Obviously, you don't want to be doing that in heavy traffic where, you know, there might be sirens or things that you can't hear. And always pull over to the side of the road before you're making any tuning changes. Please do not try to work the laptop as you drive. That is a recipe for absolute disaster. So it helps if you're on reasonably empty roads where you can pull over frequently, drive, pull over, drive, pull over. But certainly once you've got those initial maps done, I think it is quite effective working by yourself. And of course, you'll often find that if you're working with an assistant, they start running out of patience after the 20th time you've asked them to accelerate across the same RPM increment. Tuning programmable management on the road, a lot of fun. You can make the car work exactly as you want it to work. The book's called Modifying the Electronics of Modern Classics, and I have a major section on tuning programmable management, working by yourself, tuning your own car. Thank you.